Hi everyone, I'm just going to show you how to make one of these ribbon roses. I'm using those to make my bouquets, and I've had so many people ask me about them that I wanted to show how I actually made them as well. The main component that actually needs to be made here is the ribbon roses. The rest was just experiment. The greenery is all artificial. The brooches were just from eBay as well, and then wrapping them, I haven't actually wrapped them because I need to wait till I get down there because I'm storing them in floral foam. But that's the bouquet one of the bouquets that I made. It's actually one of my bridesmaids ones. You can see I've used different ribbon roses there, but that's an example of one of the roses on its own. Okay, so to make these, it's quite simple once you get the hang of it, but really tricky until you do get the hang of it. So I find that I followed a few tutorials, but they didn't quite give me full instructions. So I'm going to try and give you as much as I can to help you make your own flowers as well. You can make them as big or as little as you want. The size of them, how thick they are down here, all of that sort of stuff depends on how tight you wrap the flower, how much ribbon you use, do you keep going out sort of thing, or do you start sort of putting petals underneath? And it makes sense when you're actually making them, but really it's up to your individual style. I found that I could make really big ones quite easily, and a couple of them I made quite tall as well, but it just sort of changed every time I made one. Okay, so I've got some ribbon I've already cut. It is double-faced satin ribbon, and that's actually really important. If you use single-faced ribbon, it will still work, but it's really hard to work with. It's quite plasticky. It's not anywhere near as nice, and it's much more likely to get holes in it as well, so you really want to get the good stuff. I pay about $1 a metre for this. Sometimes $2 a metre depending on the colour and the availability, but I have a really good seller who looks after me, so he makes sure I always get the right stock. So you start off with, I found that if you stretch your arms out and hold ribbon in between, 2 of those, or roughly about 2 meters, is enough for one rose. So I'll show you, I've got a little bit of a shorter one here. I'll show you how we make the rose. So you can use a stem or you cannot use a stem. I find if you're going to use a stem eventually, if you want to have a flower on a stem to make with a bouquet, it's best to add the stem at the very start, because if you don't, it's actually not as strong and it's more likely to come off or the flower to sort of unravel later on as well. Even though it's all glued together, you really don't want to have the stem sort of trying to put it on the bottom and try and make a flat rose. It's just not as nice. So I always add the stem at the beginning. To start off with, again, you don't need to seal the ends. They're really not going to be seen, and there's going to be enough hot glue that the ends are not actually going to matter even if they're frayed, so that's fine. So you start off with, you get the end here, and we're going to put a little bit of glue along this bottom edge. Okay, we're only going to do a couple of centimeters, but what that does is gives us an edge that we can then fold over and create the start of the rose. So you put your little bit of glue on, and then you fold over. I'm not going to, let me show you. So you fold over and you're creating, sorry guys, you didn't see that as well as I would have liked, creating this this edge like this. Okay, so you can see the bubbly bit there, that's where the glue actually is sitting and where it's stuck to the ribbon. So you want to create an edge like this because it makes it easier to start off your flower. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exactly meeting the corner here or anything like that. It just gives you this nice edge along here that you then use to start your petals off. Okay, and really when you're working with the flower, you want, so from where my finger is, you want about that much every time you twist the ribbon around. It gives you like a nice petal edge. Don't worry if you don't, it'll take some time to get used to, and it doesn't matter even if you have to sort of wing it a little bit. Now if I was to add a stem to this, what I would actually do is run a line of glue from where my thumb is down to this point, pop the stem actually on that, so you would have it sort of, sorry if you can see that, sort of sitting up against it, and it was glue on there, and then you'd roll and wrap around the actual stem, and what that does is again adds that extra strength. It's right in the middle of the flower, it's not going to come off, and it's going to be nice and secure. Okay, but I'm not going to do that for this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by rolling, and I'm trying to make this as easy for you guys to see, rolling the ribbon over, and it will sort of pop out a little bit. You don't need any glue just yet. You roll it over a couple of times until you start to get like a nice little rounded bit. And this is where I found most of the tutorials that I watched didn't have this bit, so I sort of had to figure it out on my own. You roll it over a couple of times until you've essentially got that little bit of ribbon left. And then what I do is I grab the top, grab the top with my finger. It means I can stick my hot glue in here and not have to worry about burning my fingers. It's nice and secure, it's not going anywhere. I'm not going to burn myself. Okay, so you just want a little tiny glob of hot glue, and you want to put it on both layers of the ribbon. You don't want to put it just on one layer because you want both layers to stick securely. And then you roll it over just that little bit more till it's on the glue. Try not to burn yourself. Okay, so now I've got this nice little roll bit. I've got that little bit of the line there ready to go, and that's the start of my flower. Okay, so pretty simple, right? Then you twist the ribbon as you roll this around. I find that if you roll it at the same time, it's nice and easy, and it doesn't take 15 million years to make. Okay, and again, this does not need to be perfect. You'll find you will develop your own style, but it does not need to be perfect. So you end up with that, something looking like that. Okay, I've got that line again, and that's what you're aiming to get every time. If you don't get that, don't stress. You'll find that you'll get halfway through the rose and you'll not have that nice line again. Sort of, if you freak out, it's fine. So again, fold it over and then put some more glue on, and that's essentially all that you're doing all the way around. Okay, the only difference from the beginning, sort of as you go further out, is that the petals start to take shape and you start to add a little bit more definition to it as well. Okay, so again, folding around, and you twist that around as well. You can actually change the way the petals go by having this ribbon sort of straighter or sort of more further up. It's really up to you, and you can start to go around there. So I'm just going to quickly do some of the petals so I can show you how to finish it off as well. And you'll probably want to do a couple of practice ones because the first one just never quite looks right, and then you get the hang of it, and then it starts to look good. Just make sure you have something, if your glue gun's anything like mine, something that it can rest on. The glue tends to leak out and then it ends up with this giant mess. And if you get glue on the petals and you can see it, don't stress. It actually ends up looking like water drops. It looks almost like you meant to do it. So that's okay as well. So you can see as you go around, you start to get these really pretty petal shapes. I'm doing this relatively loose, so I'm not actually pulling it in super tight, and you get some really nice rounded petals, which is nice. And you just keep going around. I find that once I get sort of it established, if you hold from the top, it's a lot easier. You get a bit more control, and then you can start to look at how it looks from the top rather than sort of working from the side. I'm just going to tuck that little one in there. Okay, so I start to work from the top and get that little bit more control. And then you can control the petal shape as well. And remember, this is a rose has so many petals, and this is going to be unique and individual. It doesn't matter if it doesn't look like a rose out of the garden, because this is something that is made. There's no way to roll it around and actually make it look like a real rose, because it would just be too stressful to make. So you keep going around. Sorry, I'm not giving you as much detail as you'd like. You can see here I've only got this little tiny bit on this one, but it will still work when I glue it. I probably won't have the line that I'm looking for on the next petal. But if you just go around once more, sort of get there and you go, oh, it's not really the way I wanted it, you sort of work it and try to get a little bit of an overlap, and you might end up with something like that, but it will all work out in the end. I had to have a few goes to get used to doing it, and then after that it was pretty good. Even when I thought I stuffed up, the flower still turned out quite nice. Okay. Now it takes me a good 20 minutes to make a single rose, if I want to do it really nicely. So don't stress if it takes you a good hour for your first. And you can see that as you go around, you start to get the petals start to create almost like a pentagon shape, and then you start to fill in, so you'll have like a corner here and then here, and you start to go around and your points tend to line up with the gaps, and you create this really nice multi-pointed flower as well. So you keep going around. Okay, now with this one here, you can see we've got the base bit there. Now if I had a stem, obviously the stem would be sticking out the top. To finish it off, because obviously I don't want to spend too much time with you staring at a video. To finish it off, all you do is you flip it upside down, and then you do the exact same thing. You start rolling it over from the bottom, gluing each time. You do that a couple of times just to give a bit of strength to the center. I find that it just adds that little bit there. And then once you've gone around a couple of times, add some glue again to the edges, and then actually wrap around the stem, and you sort of push it together, and you end up with the ribbon being glued directly to the stem. Go around as many times as you want, and you can go up the stem as well to give a little bit of a nice like decorative ribbon sort of wrap. And that just means that that stem, even if you push on it, it's not going to poke through the other end of the flower. Like you can see this one here, I've wrapped all the way around. But if I have the rose and I push on that stem, it's not going through the center of that flower. You don't want the stem sticking out here, because it means that your bouquet won't be very strong, and your roses will also sort of unravel a little bit because the stem will be able to move so much. So you really do want to glue them around the stem bit there, and that's essentially how you make the flower. If you do need any more help, let me know. I'm more than happy to reach out to people individually, but that is how I make my ribbon roses.